everyone. I'm so happy that we have a full house today. Thank you so much for coming. Thank you to our wonderful speaker today for providing us this delicious lunch. So we all have energy to ask fantastic questions and get a lot of our business issues solved. Without further ado, I will introduce our speaker of today, Anton Brunga. Am I saying it correctly?
Yeah, Anton. Thank you very much. I know quite a few of you guys, but nice meeting you. And I've worked with some of you that I've never met before. I just heard that all the business problems are going to be resolved. No, I guarantee you that you're going to be more confused because we're going to briefly discuss these topics from the court's point of view, from the judge's point of view. That's why I'm saying you're going to be just more confused than when you came to the court. And definitely, I did not come here to save the day. As I said before, you know much better than I do on all of these issues. That's for sure, because you encounter them and they're of interest to you. But always it's good to remind ourselves as to what we should do and what we should put in an agreement. In addition to what I outlined as to what we're going to address on the matters of relationship with clients, standard disclosure matters, an agent is acting as a purchaser, conflicts of interest, and matters of deposit, etc. We're going to briefly also discuss matters of holdback, so matters that are actually taking place, happening, issues that are happening on the day of closing, which nobody likes. Most of you, because you want to see a smooth closing on the day of closing. You don't want to see the pissing contest between lawyers whether a speaking floor was fixed properly or not, because the agreement said that it's got to be fixed, right? So how can we just have this as a discussion? I'm not preaching here anything. I know you've encountered these issues very often. You know better than I do, but we can have this discussion and say that, okay, if there is no agreement, what would happen if this actually ends up in court? Because at the end of the day, I'm telling you that I work with quite a few guys, and sometimes the client puts pressure on you and says, hey, my lawyer's not doing anything. I just want this lawyer to do magic and get the deal closed and get me the discount for this issue not addressed, etc. And at times we see, and I see myself as well, whereby a lawyer states a position in a two-page document that this is going to happen, otherwise my client's not going to close. These are mostly correspondence that's sent to me that I forwarded to the agent, and that goes to the client, who I forwarded directly to the client. I try not to engage agents on the day of closing, and it's more to show that justice is getting done, but it's not the way actually we communicate as lawyers. At the end of the day, when 4:30 p.m. has come and there is a disagreement on to close or not to close, instead of writing two-page letters and threatening each other and etc., we say, hey buddy, this issue has been addressed. Just kindly ask you to remind your clients that this issue has been addressed in the courts, and this is pretty much what's going to happen if this ends up going to court, right? That's where we come in with these little bit of case law. I didn't provide you a copy of that. I can email it to anybody just for reference. So if you are excited about a certain case and you want to see the facts and how it happened, I have a brief summary here, but I could email you in reference to the cases. We'll also discuss briefly with respect to the new build. I know a few, at least, agents from this office deal a lot with pre-built construction. And it's a completely different game from the resales. And And usually the issues come at the time of closing after 4 years that the contract has been signed. So we'll briefly discuss about that. Also matters of status certificate, which, believe it or not, even with this market, we still see sometimes agreement where the status certificate is not a condition. I know, most of the time, that's typically, it's a basic, right? You have that as a condition. But sometimes there's competition, and we see that, oh, that was not waived. The client is very well aware of this building, is happy. Yeah, but the client's getting a mortgage. I'm acting for the bank as well. And we need at least a status certificate. Right? That will take 10 days to get, etc. And yeah, and then we'll also briefly discuss a very important issue, which is the conditions on financing. Talking about conditions of status certificate, imagine about the financing. You guys all know how it's been for last year in getting mortgages. And Craig, who's TD, and has been doing this for a while, as I said before, much older. We work well with, and he will discuss a little bit on the difference between a pre-approval and approval, and how certain institutions give pre-approvals and some others provide you direct approval, and the risks involved in that. You definitely work hard enough, sometimes supporting clients for a year and more, and you do not want to be responsible for things that are not of your domain, like mortgage issues, right? Again, we're going to have this more of this discussion, so please, as we go through, just ask some questions, and that would be the best way to, because we're trying to look at this from a practical point of view, the issues that you encounter on a day-to-day basis, and then I'll try to say, hey, maybe the courts would think differently, right? On the issue of standards of conduct with respect to dealing with clients, as we know always, our client is the biggest enemy potential. It's not the opposing party. And that goes for you, not just for us as lawyers. The opposing party, we know where we stand, we know how to fight, we know where to refer to case law, we know how to go through courts, etc. But relationship with clients are not always as clear. There's always gray areas, and there's always that need to do more. That need to do more. And when it comes to the standards of conduct, pretty much as a starting point, there is and some of the cases are the lower courts, but some cases that I will try to point out have gone all the way to the Supreme Court of Canada. That's pretty much settled the law on a certain issues. And one of them tends to be for the proposition as a starting point that agents' duty to disclose is not limited to certain instances, but extends to include everything known to the agent that would likely operate upon the principal's judgment. And that came from a case law where the purchaser and the vendor reached an agreement for purchase of the property. Agent agreed to pay the purchaser $46,000 as an incentive to close the deal. I think you might go through scenarios that sometimes could trigger that type of kickback. Agent did not disclose that information to the vendor. He was giving $46,000 to the buyer to close the deal. And after closing, the vendor found out. Excuse me, give us more chairs. Yeah. And the vendor found out and refused to pay the agent on the basis of failing to satisfy the duty to disclose everything that was known. Right? And the trial judge in this case stated that yes, there is a duty to disclose, but is limited to instances where the agent has gained an advantage. And in that particular case, it was the trial judge's opinion that in fact the agent had not gained a profit. that they just want to close the deal, even that less than the percentage that he was entitled to. And then, of course, went to the Court of Appeal, and that's why we are making reference to this case. And it says, has to disclose everything. And it's an objective test, so a reasonable person in the position of the agent. The fact that the vendor did not receive any advantage from knowing that the deal is irrelevant, that's not up to the agent to decide whether that information would have influenced the decision of the vendor. It's not for you, even if reasonably could have come to the conclusion that that would not have made a difference for the vendor, would have sold anyway. Because it's an objective test, it's not up to the agent to guess that. You have to disclose it and let the seller decide on that, right?
We got any examples of that specifically, anybody?
I just have a question.
Yeah.
So, in the term disclose, can you just sort of write it in the notes on your co-op and rep?
That's right.
Like, you don't actually have to tell them? Can't you just write it? Like, what's the definition of disclose?
Well, everything, now we go back to the basic principle that when it comes to real estate, everything is in writing.
So if you just wrote it in and you kind of
Yeah.
make your offer and they don't happen to see it,
Now, this is a different issue now.
that's what my definition of
Yeah.
disclose, because sometimes if you have that conversation, it can change the dynamics of the negotiation. But if you're just doing something with your purchaser, and you just wrote it on your agreement of co-op and rep, so it was out there,
Yeah, I see. Now, this brings us to the general rule is that in real estate, things are to be done in writing. So once you do that in writing, the burden of proof, which is a very important test in courts, is with the other party to prove that they did not read that. And both you, realtors and us, are not very like favorites of the courts if we end up in court. We know that, right? But once you put it in writing, the burden of proof has passed on to the purchaser. And if the purchaser is able to prove that actually my realtor just, we met at 11:30 at night and just made me sign this. I have never seen these documents. I was never given a copy, which brings us to the point that you have obligation to give a copy to that representation agreement, which I think it's a basic for you, but trust me, I've seen cases when that was not given, and one is being litigated now, but information was not provided. But other than that, once you put it in writing, that's a very good thing for you guys to do. Just have it in writing, then it will become he said, she said. Typically, the client has a burden to prove that nothing is discussed. But the presumption is that people know what they're signing, people know what they're doing, right? That a lot will depend who you deal with, a client is that somebody who doesn't speak English, et cetera, or might not be an Einstein. You have to work, and you have to represent everybody. But that's the disclosure. Now, another case called the disclosure was the agent did not disclose that the purchaser was actually his sister-in-law. He used her maiden name. The agent acted for both parties, and the agreement was signed. Vendor's son advised the vendor not to sell because he knew that the agent had a reputation for doing this sort of thing. Vendor did not close. Purchaser brought in action for specific performance. Trial judge acknowledged that there was a breach of agent's fiduciary duty to the vendor, but vendor was not prejudiced in any way. So trial judge found that they would have gone with the deal even anyway, right? Of course, we're making reference to this case because it comes to the Court of Appeal and it was changed, right? Appeal allowed, and the ratio is that in a situation involving breach of fiduciary duty, which is, we can go later to that, and very important, an agent is not entitled to prove that the transaction would have concluded had disclosure been made. Not entitled to that. It's for the client to decide. You cannot speculate as to how should have ended up this way anyway. So which goes in line with the previous case law. Now we have another case, let's go back to 1991, Ontario Court of Appeal. And selling agent for the purchaser, ex-company, they received commission from the vendor from the sale of the property. Before closing, purchaser flipped the property at a sizable profit. And the same agent acting for them in the purchaser now acting for them in the flip. Vendor found out about the flip and sued the agent, who they say must have known that there was a buyer out there for that price, since he was involved in the deal. And the issue is, what is the nature and extent of the seller's agent duty to the vendor, where the agent has no contract with the vendor, and sometimes it deals, because you have the client relationships and customer relationships, right? In this case, the agent had no contract with the vendor, nor does not advise him as to the seller, on the selling of the property. The vendor said, I sell my own property, right? And it was held in favor of the agent, which it looks like in contrast a little bit to the previous two cases, but it's really not, right? So no duty owed to the vendor where the selling agent has no direct contract with the vendor and is not providing advice. A law stands on the details, actually, whether you might have a signed contract or not, and if you de facto become an advisor, that might change the situation. But generally, you're not providing advice to a seller, you have no contract with the seller, your obligations are limited to that party, right? Mostly goes towards your client, right?
Does everybody understand the difference between a customer relationship and a client relationship? Okay.
I have a question.
Different bar, yeah.
Which agent was sued by the seller?
Well, so the same agent who acted on the original contract with the same agent then flipped, acted for somebody else on the
You
flip.
mean the buyer agent?
Yeah, there was no two agents, it was only one agent.
Representing both sides.
Yeah. The seller said, I don't want an agent. So if you bring a client, and you encounter those situations, bring a client, go sell it, and the agent says, I have a client, I have a client relationship with that client, I can make an offer to you, like it or not, right? So the obligations towards that seller are limited. That's the point of this case. You then have to go over and beyond satisfying the interest of the seller when you have no contract, no obligations towards it. Actually, you have to focus on the interest of your client.
Even though the financials are substantial in that situation.
Well,
I just mentioned, yeah. Here's a guy, I'll buy it for $250, but it's really worth $500.
well, sometimes it's not your obligation to educate clients and the opposing party on that, but the other party, not the opposing party in this case. But
I'd be very, very careful.
I'd be
with such
careful.
a-
Again, these cases are a lot dependent on the specifics, the facts of the case. And you should not take this as for granted that you have no obligation whatsoever to the other party. Because if you end up actually being asked questions and you answer, that changes completely, right? Because that means that you're misleading them and you're manipulating them. There's other areas, issues that come up. But if there is strictly, you make it clear that you are not representing them, you're not giving advice. I have a client relationship with a purchaser, I'm making an offer, here's the offer, you like it or not. But the contacts are very limited, right, to justify this type of decision. And then we go to the situation where a case law that actually refers to something that happens often in reality is cases when the buyer, Susan Marie, emphasizing the requirement for a 4-bedroom home, right? They found a house where downstairs would be converted into a 4th bedroom. Agent did not say whether or not it was a bedroom, but they proceeded believing that it could be converted into a bedroom. Agent did not recommend going to a lawyer, so they did not make the agreement conditional upon whether or not it could be converted. Guess what? Of course, that's why we're discussing this, because it turned out that it could not be converted to a bedroom, right? Which brings us to another issue that we can discuss later, which is the legal basements, right? And they found out they could not convert it due to zoning. Standard, we know that, and the deal, and wanted to get out of the deal, the purchaser. The vendor sued for not closing the transaction. They settled for $55,000 damages, and of course, who they sued? The agent, right? We know that. And the issue becomes important. What's the agent's standard of care? And it was helpful to the client, for the purchaser. An agent should exercise such care diligence or as usual as necessary to the ordinary conduct of the profession, which stands for the position is very high. We have a high bar. You have to meet a pretty high bar. Once you are representing a purchaser, you cannot miss on that type of issue. And it's clearly stated that I want 4-bedroom. You have to make sure that it's a 4-bedroom, or make it a condition of the agreement, or just get rid of the problem and say, here's a lawyer. Let them deal with
You
it.
think of the number of times that everybody's doing, you've got a 3-bedroom house and the basement's gonna have a bedroom or two. Lots of times.
Yeah, so if the listing said 4 bedrooms,
Yeah.
did the listing say 4 bedrooms? Or did it say 3 plus? That makes a difference for us.
Brings us to an issue. Actual listing does not form part of the agreement of purchase and sale for legal purposes. So once you go to court, the judge will say, okay, what's the contract? Listing is not part of the contract. You're going to see that it might make a difference, could affect the decision if an issue becomes the allegation of, oh, you misled us, right? When misleading allegations and fraud and stuff like that, and say that in fact, all I'm saying that you're misleading us, it's corroborated by the fact that in the listing it said this, right? So enticements and whatnot, but generally, listing is not part of the agreement of purchase and sale. I like when an agreement comes without the listing agreement.
So, yeah, I've seen some offers come with it attached as a schedule, and sometimes not, so.
Oh, schedule, yes. Schedules
Yeah.
are part of the agreement, no question
But
about
they'll
that.
say, Schedule E, and it's the listing.
And that's a good way to put it.
Right, so.
If you're
would
acting for
you-
the purchaser.
For the purchaser.
Absolutely.
Okay, so that's a good thing to do.
Yeah, have that as, if you include it as a schedule, that forms part of the agreement, but if it's just a listing for the world to see, then it's more advertising than anything else, right? It's the obligation for the purchaser to actually to compare and see that the square footage is stated in, or the data that is stated in the listing, actually it's reflected in the agreement. You cannot go by the listing, right? And we've seen cases when it's listed that, oh, beautiful basement apartment, possibility for a rental income. Make sure that you put that in the agreement if you're acting for the purchasers. They actually know that it's a legal apartment, which is a complete another issue that we could discuss later.
Sorry, the use of the space as a bedroom, no kitchen, no bathroom, no change to electrical. They couldn't, the configuration of the space went to zoning to determine whether or not it could be used as a bedroom surprises. Or why did it have to go to zoning?
Well, you cannot say a bedroom apartment, right, for rental, unless it is.
So it was a basement, it was a basement apartment not just being used as a 4th bedroom?
No, it could be converted. Talking about, they found a house that could be converted, that's what they believe, could be converted to a 4th bedroom. A 4th bedroom. But good, the key word is good, and it turned out it could not, because once they checked the legislation, the municipal laws and provincial, et cetera, said, no, you're not allowed to have
A legal form.
a legal.
Yeah, but see, what my point was, in all of our points, and yours is, often people put 4th bedrooms in the basement.
Yeah.
They're a dime a dozen. As we sit here right now, it's going on in every one of your deals, and it's not legal.
Well, no, but you can, yeah, exactly.
That's all I'm
In
saying.
order to have it legal and to call it a basement apartment, that's a different from this 4th bedroom.
So it just can be advertised that way?
Yeah.
Right.
Just advertise
Fire code gets in.
Right, but if there was an area downstairs with a closet and a window and the size of a bedroom, and you called it a bedroom in the basement, you would have to include the retrofit clause in order to mitigate any risk with that?
Well, this could be a different test from having an actual legal separate apartment
I'm
downstairs.
not,
Yeah.
nothing to do with.
But still, certain municipalities do not allow, in this case, they did not allow there to have an actual bedroom because of risk of fire. I don't know what the coding was.
Okay, but going forward as a listing agent, is the onus on me to not call it a bedroom? Do I call it an office, a den, a rec room?
Most of the time they're not. You guys do not call basement apartments, but you don't count them there.
We call it plus
Plus
one.
one.
Plus one.
You look at a,
As a
if you
bedroom.
get 3,000 listings in Toronto right now, listed that way. Plus one, all of them are a room with perhaps no closet and no bathroom, maybe a bathroom down the hall, maybe not. And they're all plus one, 3,000 right now. And they're all gonna sell that way, there's no litigation that happens following that. Because people are buying, to get the rental income out of it sometimes just to use it.
Because most of those homes, yes, you can have a person go to sleep and it's according to fire.
Right, but I'm never calling anybody to verify that.
No, the city, you're not gonna call the
I
city.
don't call the city to verify whether or not a room the size of a bedroom in a house that I'm listing could actually be used as a bedroom.
And we know even for illegal apartment issues, a lot of them are being rented and they are not, but that doesn't make it right. Because if it will become an issue, that could jeopardize the closing of the closing.
So in this case, did the agent say, if the agent said, oh, you could probably convert this into a
That's right.
basement? So it was just word of mouth that it was he said, she said?
That's right, that's
And
right.
that still
Yeah.
got the agent into trouble?
Well, because the purchaser had made it clear that I want 4 bedrooms.
Okay, and they did that in writing?
Yeah, that's right,
And
yeah.
the fourth bedroom had to be a legal bedroom,
Oh,
I'm saying.
Yeah. Yeah, there were 3 bedrooms upstairs and downstairs, the municipality in Sault Ste. Marie, what the case was, it would be completely different. Just, the point of this case is that if you have a specific request, just try to be sure that that is
Okay.
satisfied.
yeah.
And we have agents acting as purchasers. So we don't see that often, but sometimes we do. This reference is made to the Real Estate and Business Brokers Act, goes to section 31. It's basically requires agents and brokers to identify themselves as agents or brokers, right? In a written statement to the vendor, when purchasing, leasing, etc., the property for themselves or making an offer to purchase or lease. Also, the vendor must acknowledge the receipt in writing, must acknowledge that actually they got this notification. So case law that goes to 1980s, their high court, but it does not challenge for appeals, so it's a good law. Is that, and the issue is this technical compliance, merely disclosing that the purchase as an agent is not enough. Agent bought property from the vendor and disclosed that he was an agent. Agent then sued the vendor for commission when the vendor would not pay after the agent flipped the property and made a profit. Was simple disclosure of the fact that he was an agent was enough to satisfy the duty of care in this case. That was the issue, and it was held for the vendor, for the client. So, and the ratio is that technical compliance, simply disclosing as per section 32 of the Act is not enough. The agent must disclose all information that relates to the value of the property. Example, full information available to them, right? Because, and this is, we know that the reason for this, they want to avoid cases when a client would be taken advantage, right? And say, yeah, put it in writing, I'm the agent, but once you get into a relationship with a client and you expect them to get paid by commission, you have the obligation to actually provide full service, full advice on what the price would be on the property. So simply technical compliance is not good enough. That's the point of what you take from this.
Usually the agent bought a property for himself and wanted commission from the seller.
Right?
No, in this case, flip.
Yeah, but you wanted to get commission on the initial sell.
On the initial.
Yeah, that's right.
Right.
That's right. That's right.
So if he just bought the property and said, you don't think, I'll deduct the commission, and this is my offer, no commission.
Well, there's potential for lawsuit there as well. It doesn't make it any better because it gets sued for the difference in price. Flipping, right? Based on the.
No, not if you're just taking it as an investment property. You want to
You're
get
gonna hold
that
it.
on, then you're gonna hold it.
Well,
As a rental.
Everything can be agreed between parties, right? But that does not change the rationale of this case that says that technical compliance is not good enough. You have to, once you enter into an agreement with the client to sell their home, you have to serve them well. Yeah, you have to serve them to the best.
We don't run into this that often with single deals, like you buying a house for yourself,
Right.
and it's usually there's 3 or 4 other people trying to buy the same house, so the client's well aware of the price, and your price is suitable. There's instances where you're on your own, could be on your own in some way out location somewhere, and you're taking advantage of the client as a buyer. And as a licensed agent, taking advantage of buyers is illegal. So you have to provide them the facts, and
Yeah, like
information.
a little old lady and you're like,
It's happened.
yeah.
So
But
in
on the
this
subject of commission of late, I've seen a whole lot of deals of late where the seller is not accepting the roll-in of the commission of the buyer if he's an agent.
It's not what?
So what's in fact happening is that an agent, one of you guys want to buy a house in competition, and you say, I'll pay this amount of money less my commission, because I'm buying it for myself.
Yeah, we see that, I see those agreements.
So what's happening a lot is that information is getting conveyed back to the other prospective buyers. And they're realizing there's a competitive advantage to you over them. So the seller, an intelligent seller, is saying, to hell with you. You're going in at the same price, coming in like everybody else, including your commission. And then eventually, that math will get worked out. But I want you to put in your best offer, and I don't want to disadvantage some higher offers from other people because you're taking 2.5% off the table. That's starting to happen.
I've seen people say that there's no commission cutting because they
That's-
want it,
That's what it is, that's what's
That's
driving
exactly
it.
what it
That's
is.
what's driving it.
But you do have to disclose that, right? That you were buying as a buyer.
Yes,
They have
right.
to tell everyone too that an offer has come in where the buyer, the agent is a buyer and they're cutting their commission. They have to tell the other buyers.
So the other buyer gets frustrated, as you guys all know. Many of you have experienced those deals, and it's frustrating to know that 2.5% is off the table, and you're advantaged. So if I'm a seller in today's world, I'm going to say, no, I would like to see those other offers
That's right.
on the table.
So technical, yeah, it goes back to technical compliance, not going to be enough. You really have to disclose details and provide the service. Which brings us to another case law that this.
It's an HST issue at that point, eventually.
I'm just
All you lose
confused
is
about
the
that though.
HST.
If I buy a house from a seller, and so in this case, it was I bought the house as an agent, and then when they closed, I put it back on the market and I made a killing on it. Is that what that's?
It was before closing, flipping
It was
before closing.
before closing, so I was still under contract.
We've got a couple of those too.
You have a reassignment clause.
Could be either one.
Agreement comes into play with the seller and the buyer. The buyer doesn't want to close, so that but he's agreed to a certain price. The buyer's cool with the price, but it gives them the right to put it on the market before closing. And that we've done a couple of those, and it goes on the market and sells for more money. But he's only agreed to a certain amount of money to the buyer. The difference is complicated. It's not settled.
Just a small thing about that too is that they always go into but one thing leads to another. So am I still under contract with the seller once it closes?
Well, the contract is, your obligation to the seller is, it's irrelevant to closing or not. If you're making a profit, that could have been
Yeah, in this
at the-
particular case.
at the expense of the seller to whom you own
Yeah.
certain obligations, you're open for lawsuit, right?
My question is the difference because it was closed, it was on the market before closing. So after closing, would that guy still be able to?
Well, the
sell it?
reason why they like to do it before closing, before closing is to avoid certain lots of costs, like land transfer tax and whatnot. But it doesn't change the nature of the issue, whether it closes before or after. Still, it will go back to your obligations towards the seller to actually provide the services that you contracted for and all the evidence of their potential value of the property, etc.
That's especially big on new build, obviously, because the HST, right? If they're not going to occupy, they've got to pay the HST if they're going to close.
Yeah, that's
Huge problem.
I have a question. I wasn't clear when you related the story, where the agent who sold the house from the seller, did the seller know that he's an agent? At that time?
Yes, but that was still just technical compliance. And that's what the agent said. I conveyed that I'm the agent, which,
So did he say he was buying it to sell to somebody else at the beginning, or did he?
no, that did not provide.
He promoted himself as a buyer who wants to buy a house who happens to be an agent.
Yeah, okay.
Is that how it was?
Well, and again, it goes back to the fact that simply disclosing that you are an agent, and this pertains to the cases when you are actually entering into a contract with the seller, you're getting paid by the seller. The obligation is not limited, I am an agent, I'm disclosing it to you here, sign it. You actually have to provide all the information available. You have to make it available to the public. You have to get offers. You have to solicit offers. You have to provide all that information. Otherwise, you're open for a lawsuit because you took advantage of the seller, of your client. Right?
It's getting more and more litigious, guys and girls.
Yeah.
And what was the upshot of this one? What was the upshot of this one?
Well, it's always, that's the rationale of the case.
What
that you
happened
have
to the
disclosed.
guy? What happened to the agent?
A lot of this case law is something that is never said, but it's known by the lawyers, is that whoever loses the issue loses tens and tens of thousands of dollars in cost. These are never discussed in the decisions, but a lot about getting involved in these litigation is the cost of litigation, because most of these cases that have gone to Court of Appeal and Supreme Court, it costs into the hundreds of thousands if it goes to the Supreme Court, obviously, right? And you might, the difference on the cost or the difference on the commission could have been 50,000, but the actual cost of litigating could have been over 100,000.
So you make a decision early on, everybody.
Don't do that.
Well, you decide what's it gonna cost,
Yeah.
and you've got RICO insurance, and they're gonna look at it, they're gonna jump in.
We are inexpensive as lawyers when it comes to closing deals. That's why I need to do 100 per month. But when it comes, if it goes to litigation, it's a costly process. Not everybody can litigate. Not everybody, but
But it's foolish to litigate way beyond the cost. Like if you start to look at the return on the circumstance, even though it's your right, unfortunately.
But again, we have in this other colorful case law, it's Silas and Perkins-Silas, 1997 Supreme Court of Canada. It's a good law, not challenged. It cannot be challenged by anybody other than the Supreme Court itself, obviously. This was a case of a constructive trust when you do not disclose to your client. Facts are almost the same as above, but the purchaser wanted a commercial property in this case, in which the tenant was a bank. And agent purchased the property. Agent himself purchased that property that the client wanted initially, which decreased in value. And just looking at the dates, 1997 probably refers to the early 90s, right? Because it takes about 5, 6, 7 years to go to the Supreme Court case typically. So it was early 90s when the market went down. Purchaser lost money, pretty much the agent. But the purchaser still sued the agent. One of those cases remind us of somebody south of the border where it says that Bank of America is no tenant. So we like the fact that the bank in this case was the commercial tenant of this building. And court was divided on this because this changed a very basic rule that, not changed, but changed it for this case, not for the other cases, that the basic rule is that you as agent might do lots of bad things, or I as a lawyer. Nobody can sue me unless unless the person lost money, suffered damages. So one of the tests to take somebody to court is, yes, you have to prove wrongdoing, etc., and causation that this wrongdoing came from you, etc. But one major factor and test is you have to suffer damages to sue somebody. Settled law for 300 years. This guy did not suffer any losses. Actually gained by not purchasing, and says I'm still going to sue the agent. And because it went to the Supreme Court of Canada, of course, different judges had different opinions before that. But then when it came to the Supreme Court of Canada, the dissent was that you suffered no damage, so there's no loss, get lost, right? But the majority said that, ordered the imposition of a constructive trust in this case. And said that you purchased this property while you should have purchased it for the purchaser. So we're instituting a constructive trust, like you bought this for the actual client. But you're gonna be entitled you're gonna be entitled to no profit. You're gonna suffer the losses. And most importantly, in this case, was the costs. So they had to hold against the agent for the cost was in the 200,000s.
Legal costs?
Yeah, legal costs. And so what do we take from this case is that it's still, you have to suffer damages, that's still good law, you have to suffer damages to sue somebody. But in cases when that involves agents or lawyers that we have fiduciary duties towards the clients, the courts will come up sometimes with instruments like a constructive trust, etc., just to find us wrong. That we cannot do this type of stuff, purchase it, to mislead, to not disclose something to the client. That's exactly what we take from this case. Don't get into that. They're telling us. Now, with respect to the ability to evade the payment of commission, I don't have to teach you guys for this. You know much better how to deal on this case, but in these cases. But this goes back to the strict interpretation of the holdover period rule. If the agreement is signed outside of the holdover period, even if the client deliberately waits for that time to pass, then the agent is not entitled to the commission. That's the start. I think there's agreement into that, right?
No, sorry, I don't. I understood that if an agent showed a property to a client while the property was listed.
Yeah, we'll go next. There's no exceptions. And what if agreement is not in writing, for example? Again, the principal rule in real estate is that the agreements have to be in writing. We'll discuss that this as well. And the Real Estate Brokers Business and Brokers Act states in section 23 that in order to advance a claim for commission, the agreement must be in writing and signed by the vendor. 23B is an exception. But to this rule, if the agent obtains an offer in writing, the vendor accepts that offer. You have to pay. And this was a case when Supreme Court, again in 1976, where the agent is considered to have obtained an offer in writing, he is entitled to a commission even if the listing agreement is not in writing. I'm not saying to rely on this for you. You try to absolutely get it in writing. But there's case law, Supreme Court, still good law, that it doesn't have to be necessarily in writing. The specifics of this case, and then the rationale goes further, says where a party is a mere instrumentality, example, only introducing parties, you're out of luck, obviously you cannot claim for that. In this case, the vendor wanted to sell a hotel. Agent had attempted to obtain a listing for the building, but the vendor, represented by the president of the company, did not want to sign an agreement giving exclusive listing rights. You encounter these cases, I'm sure, right? But the vendor orally assures the agent that he will get paid if he brings in the purchaser. Guess what? The agent was instrumental in drafting the agreement because that communication can be corroborated by email, text, etc., etc. And was instrumental and introduced the property to the purchaser and was very much involved. After closing the deal, the purchaser, vendor refused to pay commission because the agreement was not in writing. It is very important to understand that specifics matter, facts matter. In this case, we're talking about the sale of a hotel where the signing authority is the president, was a much wealthier guy than the realtor. Had the upper hand in the relationship. Sometimes you want a client, you cannot force to get something in writing, but you still want to cater to that client. It's a funny relationship, but you deal with those, I'm sure, often. And
we try to get agency agreements all the time, don't we?
Absolutely.
And we don't get them all the time, but we try to.
this is an exception.
Eventually you get them.
And the issue in this case is an oral promise enforceable. And it was helpful for the agent in this case. It's good law still. Again, don't rely on this. And the reason was that the agent was considered to have obtained an offer. It was not just simply instrumental and superficially just introducing the parties, right? So where an agent is considered to have obtained an offer in writing, he's entitled to commission even if the listing agreement is not in writing. Where a party is a mere instrumentality, example only introducing party, he is not considered to have obtained the agreement, therefore not entitled to a commission. Which brings us to another case where I think the issue was, is the vendor obliged to pay commission to agents? And we've encountered, I'm sure, those cases where you have an agreement in writing with the client, and then the client ends up selling with somebody else, right? Not very pleasant. And the case law stands for the proposition that actually the vendor is obliged to pay both parties. You cannot get into that kind of practice, right?
Yeah, we have a couple of those too, right now.
Yeah. This was a, this is now, for example, this case, the Court of Appeal, this was a lease of the property in which commission can be higher than sales. Commissions are based on the terms of the rental. Owner wanted to lease 78,000 square feet, but would not sign a listing agreement with the agent. Instead, he promised to pay whoever finds a tenant. The agent found a potential tenant and met 2 or 3 times during a week during the negotiation, but could not close the deal. And the agent went on vacation. When he returned, the vendor had entered into a listing agreement for the sale of his friend, another agent. And who set the terms of the listings, but had it in writing. They accidentally ran into a potential tenant, accidentally or not, that's the question, introduced by the other agent, by the previous agent, right? And they negotiated and closed the deal, commission going to the friend agent. The original agent sued for commission, arguing that the terms were basically the same. And of course, it was helpful for the agent because a lot of things that are not told are implied and understood by the judges. This was a case when just wanted to give the money to a friend agent and to stiff the other guy, right? So that should not, that's not right, and that should not fly. But it's expensive to litigate, try to avoid that.
I just want to get back to what we were just talking about a moment ago. This is something we run into realistically. When you've got a buyer agency agreement signed with someone, and you've been working with them for a period of time, you have an agency agreement for 6 months, a year, whatever period, and you're showing them lots of properties and educating them, and you take them to a listing, and they like it, but don't decide to buy it at that particular period of time. The seller, there's a holdover period of 90 days. That's assumed, written in the contract. And you eventually, your buyer that you've got an agency agreement eventually buys the property through another agent. Not through you, even though you've got an agency agreement in place, bona fide agency agreement in place. There's 2 time frames. You could buy it during the 90-day period, or you could buy it beyond the 90-day period. Okay? So the day the holdover period ends, 2 days later, it goes in and puts the offer in with the other agent. Do you believe you're entitled to commission at that point or not, after the holdover?
Are they under contract still with that
Well, you've
agency
got
contract with the first agent?
you could have, you're under contract beyond the holdover period
Okay.
with that agency,
Yeah.
with that person. And the house they wanted to buy, they waited till the holdover period ended. And they might have bought it directly from the seller. They might have dealt with another agent. Are you entitled
Yeah,
to get paid?
I would say yes.
Because I showed it to them, right?
No.
And I can prove that I showed it.
Yes, you've done your job.
2 days after.
But they
How long
signed
after?
2 days after.
So
So
I
if
showed
your
them the
buyer agency has expired.
No.
And the holdover?
No, the buyer
No, it
agency is
hasn't
not expired.
Oh,
So
well, then yes.
that person did 2 buyer agencies then?
Oh,
They're
yeah, you can
with-
get paid, but if it has expired,
You don't get paid.
once we talk about
My point
holdover
is-
period,
Yeah, you can buy it, if someone buys a property when you get an agency agreement, your guy buys a property through another agent, you're entitled to be paid, not the
Yes.
other agent.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes.
That's for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
But it's the decision, the point we're trying to get resolved here is that if this happens during the first 90, during the holdover clause period, or after it, The
That's
both
the purpose
effect
of
to
a
both
holdover.
play.
Right.
That's the purpose of it.
Right,
90
so if
days.
it's
Whatever
not
happens-
within the holdover, then you would still be
You're-
entitled.
yes.
If it happens after the holdover, you're not.
You're not
You are if you have a buyer representation in place.
But it
But-
just
but-
You-
expired.
you would-
but-
As long as
It's
you're the
expired.
agent that introduced them to the property.
Yeah.
So your burden of proof is you have to introduce them to the property
Within
and
that
have an
90
active
days.
buyer agency
It's not
agreement,
expired.
and you're still entitled to the commission.
It's not expired. The holdover doesn't
Yes.
exist.
No, once we mention holdover period, that implies that the contract has expired.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
I'm thinking of the on termination date.
Yeah,
You're right.
yes,
I
you're right,
apologize.
you're right, that's right, you're right.
So once the termination of the contract,
Yes, you're paid.
once
Only for that period.
once the holdover period is done, you're out of luck. Unless you can resort to the exception that you had discussed, whereby even without a contract, you can be instrumental into getting an agreement, right?
Yeah.
But otherwise, you're out of luck. That's the point of
After
that.
holdover, you're out of luck.
One thing that we encounter a lot,
So make your holdover periods long.
Exactly, 120 days.
120 days.
that's right. We've seen, we usually see a lot 30 days, right?
That does make sense, yeah.
But no one should care if they're not, like, if you do it longer, it shouldn't
That
matter
really
if you're okay
minimizes,
with
yeah.
the
That really minimizes the issues because
You
everyone
want
is willing
a
to
solid
solve
five-star
to wait for the
Yeah,
time of the
in
contract
the
to finish,
habit.
and then wait another 3 months. People want to move on with their lives, usually that remains the problem. 3 months is fair. Now, the deposit, this is another issue that we, at least, encountered on a weekly basis. Deal doesn't close, and we see those often, but Craig will touch on that as well. The bank pulls the plug the day before, a few days before closing. And then we go through a request to extend. We're doing those every day, every week, if not every day. Then, when I'm acting for the seller, I will definitely suggest to my client to ask for a further deposit. You have to be careful on the drafting or even the agreement. Is it a deposit or a further payment? You don't say further payment. You say further deposit. Because by being a deposit, case law is clear and it stands for the proposition that the forfeiture of deposit is going to take place even if you cannot prove losses. It's automatically done. If you say further payment, that means that you actually have to go to court and establish that I lost money by not selling this property. And you have to prove the losses again while you go to court and litigate an issue. Would it always further deposit? Then you want to be careful as to how much is that deposit. Typically, case law stands for the proposition that usually between 3 and 10% is the norm for deposits. With exceptions, if the closing is 6 months from now, that usually tends to go higher than 10%, is still acceptable and is good. But if you have a standard 30-day closing or 60-day closing, and you put a deposit just in order to win over another offer, you put 25% down, it's not going to fly as a deposit. There's clear case law that it's not going to be considered a deposit, 25%, 30%. So,
why is that?
It's a down payment.
Why not?
the idea, the rationale for the deposit is that you don't have to prove loss, you don't have to go to court for that. You automatically get that money by virtue of breach of the contract. Typically, you're entitled to costs and money after you prove it to court, right? After you get it proven and you get it resolved. But they try to make it, this is easier. Lower test, you don't have to go to court. Typically, you might have to go to court because
The
of
specific amount, like the 25% is what I'm confused.
well, these are arbitrary thresholds, but typically 3 to 10% is a deposit, is a commitment. You're committing this and you accept that you're risking this money if you cannot close it. 25% is not a deposit.
So are you saying that because the percentage is so high, it's now considered maybe a payment as opposed to deposit?
It's considered
Oh,
a
okay,
payment.
now I
That's
get
correct.
it, yeah.
Because you as a seller might get a 30% deposit,
Right.
and the buyer asks you for an extension of a week because they couldn't get a mortgage, and then you have the right legally to say, get lost. I'm not agreeing to an extension, I'm just taking that $300,000 out of $1 million sale, and I'm gonna sell it to somebody else for another $1 million, and you walked away with $300,000. That's not fair, right? Equity comes into place, right? That's the rationale. But if you put 10%, 3 to 10%, that's the price for breaching the agreement, and that's acceptable norm.
If someone asks for an extension, I mean, this has happened before on figuring out the mortgage. What if the other lawyer is like, no, let's just take the deposit and not close it? But how would you, does that ever happen?
No, I don't.
Like, if you ask for an extension on closing,
Mhm.
what reasonable grounds is there to refuse an extension of a couple days?
Oh, well, you can simply refer to the contract.
And so they could just take the deposit and.
No.
But there's always exceptions. Purchasing a home for $1 million is 10 days of a little bungalow, and you put $100,000 down, and it's a matter of practice, and it's happening every day. Once you get a request for an extension, there is a general duty in courts to act reasonably.
Okay,
Not
yeah.
heavy-handed, right? That's the test. So, and you're not going to the court with clean hands if you say that, oh, I have the right to refuse. That's why we never suggest that to the client,
Yeah.
right? We say, okay, but there is a price for that. We say, we're extending, I'm just gonna ask for another further deposit. Number one, I'm gonna slam you with some costs, legal fees, and moving costs and inconvenience, a few $1,000 extra.
Yeah.
Could be 5, could be 10,000, whatever, right? Then it's hard for the buyers not to accept those terms. Because if you end up going to court, I didn't refuse your request for a week, but I gave you some conditions.
Yeah.
So the burden of proof goes to the other party to prove that actually I acted unreasonably. So extensions happen all the time. They're happening on a daily basis, right? But there's costs.
Yeah.
That's why I try to tell the clients that try to have ducks in a row, try to get mortgage, because it's gonna cost you thousands of dollars if you ask an extension.
With regards to the deposit, I hear two different arguments. If you sign a deal and with the promise of bringing the deposit within 24 hours,
Yeah.
so if they don't bring the deposit within 24 hours, the deal becomes null and void.
That's a fundamental breach, yeah.
But I've also heard that it doesn't matter. It's still a legitimate offer, even if they don't bring the deposit within
It's a
24
legitimate offer for the benefit of the seller, in the sense that you made an offer. By virtue of not bringing an offer, it doesn't become necessarily, it becomes null and void. It's a fundamental breach of the purchaser. You can say, get lost, I'm listing the property the moment they have failed to.
Oh, from the seller, right, okay.
Yes, and then the seller can say, but it's not gonna end there. I'm gonna sell it now. And if I sell it for less, I'm gonna come after you for any losses. But the purchaser has no recourse. And actually, there is case law.
I mean, sorry, the purchaser, meaning that if they don't bring the
Bring the
deposit,
deposit, have
they're
no-
still,
No, they're not, they have no agreement, they have no right to that agreement. They cannot go and register a litigation lien on the property.
But the seller, the listing agent would have to declare in writing that the agreement is now null and void and they're reselling it, because if they come with the deposit 2 days later.
And if you accept it, then the agreement is revived.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, you put them a notice, say you failed, fundamental breach, I'm relisting. You have to do that.
Is a mutual release required, or?
No,
No?
And that be done
I
right
didn't
after
see that
24
one.
hours?
I'm sorry?
Like exactly after 24
Or
hours?
the minute they
The
have
minute
failed
after.
to bring the deposit, that's considered a fundamental breach from the purchaser. And actually, there is a case law to that effect.
It says like, if you lease a property and you have a listing agreement for 3 months, and once the listing agreement 3 months is over, now you have auto. Now, once the listing period is over, so the seller lists with another guy. But they're saying like if you list at, the seller lists with the first salesperson with 4%, and if you list after the agreement is over, if you list at another like 4%, then there is no problem. But if you list like something more than 4%, like if you try to list at more than 4%,
These are irrelevant.
no, because with the previous question where they said like you have an agreement and once the agreement is over for the buyer, there's a holdover period. Now during that time, if someone buys the property, though he is after the agreement is over, but he's buying at the holdover period, but that property was shown by the salesperson during the agreement time, so he gets, that means he gets the commission, right? But if that is the case, means tomorrow if I go ahead and sell a property to a buyer, then I have to ask the buyer whether you have seen this property with another agent or not, because if he has already seen and this period is within that holdover period, then that means if I work, I'm not getting anything.
Yeah, I'm sure I've seen that all the time, that you guys do that due diligence. You say, are you in agreement with another agent, right? I think that's even put in writing in the cooperation. Or no, not necessarily, right?
Buyer agency.
Yeah, buyer agency agreement, right?
But even though,
Over, right?
that's why they say you should use the buyer agency registry, because otherwise there's no way to know if you're in a holdover period.
But the purpose of the holdover period is not to have the agent who worked during the contract get stiffed for work that they had done on a specific offer, right? Because otherwise, why we have a holdover period, right? We have a contract. But we know cases when they got to work with a certain potential buyer, and they just delayed the closing, right, or the offer. That's the purpose. If you have worked in a specific potential offer, that's the purpose of the holdover period, that you should get paid during those 3 months.
So for example, so if most of the time the clients tell you, oh, somebody else already showed me this house, or can you show me this house again? Some other agent showed me this property before and I'm interested in this property. So at that time, you have to ask the client, do you have any agreement with this other agent that showed you the house before?
That's right.
Right? And she said, for sure, they're gonna say, no, not anymore, we didn't have any contract or anything. Okay, then you go show the property again. I think the best way to know that they don't have any agreement is to call the other agent, or you show this property to this client, I'm gonna show it to her.
Well, you educate the client, said that there's a holdover period. In fact, they've seen this house.
What about the, is it mutual release? Is it like a letter saying that, for example, if I decide not to work with the client anymore and she wants to work with her, do we need to write some specific form?
Everything can be contracted, right? But typically, once an agreement is terminated with a client, I don't think they're very keen to signing contracts with mutual release. That's it's common sense, right? They're not going to cooperate.
Just to make sure that I'm gonna get paid, right?
Sure, but they probably will not sign something more than they have to.
So I find in this area that a lot of people have been flipping or doing renos on places, and it's very common to buy something that's being updated. Are you suggesting always putting in the listing, if they say legal basement apartment, how do you prove, like, would you put that in a listing? Or an agreement of purchase and sale, you just put the listing in where it says legal, or you would just have a clause adding that it is a legal basement?
You cannot intentionally mislead people in the listing, right? Although it's not part of the agreement, because it will come back onto you, right? But typically, if you are asking for a seller, I made reference to some suggestions of clauses like that. And the first one is very broad, and many buyers would raise red flags and whatnot. But most of the time we see either you say, I make no representation with respect to the basement, or simply say nothing. Because the assumption, the burden of proof is on the purchaser, then to prove that actually he or she was led to believe that there is a basement. And that's when the listing agreement, although it's not part of the agreement, would come into play.
Okay.
To prove that.
So as a buyer though, it would be better to put the listing in or a clause saying that the seller represents, do you know what I'm trying to say?
Yeah, our focus was more, what do you do when you're acting for the seller? But yeah, if you're acting for the buyer, and you have been seeing a listing that makes reference to an apartment, of course you want to have it in the agreement, but a good agent on the other side would never agree to that clause unless it's true.
Yes.
And then,
Because you're on the hook.
And if the bank needs to use the income, if it's not illegal, we're not using it.
Yeah, there we go.
so, and then one other quick question, if, unless the house says as is everything supposed to be functioning as normal? Like
This
what's,
is another issue.
Yeah, don't put as is.
On a daily basis, and I have to explain
Don't do
full
it.
due respect to some agents as well.
Handyman special.
But most of the
You
clients
can get them work.
say, hey, we had the last visit.
Handyman special.
They even say last inspection, and
Yeah.
believe it or not, it's even in the agreement, they have the right to 3 more inspections. No, we have no right to more 3 more, we have the right to 3 more visits, no inspection, inspection is only 1. But then you say, we had a last visit, and we see that the stove is not working, the fridge is not working, or this thing is not working.
what if it'll?
Because the agreement says, there's a clause in the agreement that says that the vendor is to provide all chattels and fixtures in good working order. That's part of the agreement,
Yeah.
but it's not working. Probably they didn't pay attention, they didn't even have an inspection, right?
Yeah,
They were in a rush to compete with somebody else and get an offer. And I have to explain that due diligence principle. Buyer beware. Finality of transactions. These are principles that will override this general boilerplate clause in the agreement. If you do not do an inspection, you have no recourse. If you waive the inspection, you have not done properly, and you cannot come up and say, this is tantamount to, you go to a great neighborhood, you have a garbage property, nothing is working, and then you get a sweet deal for $1 million. Then you say, hey, by the way, the agreement says that you're going to provide all these in good working order. Can you fix everything? It's going to cost another $100,000. You cannot do that. It's obvious, right? And that's why I explained to the clients, you cannot. Once you have seen the property, you cannot come and say something is not working, unless you can prove that that thing broke from the time of the firming up of the agreement until the time of closing. And you have to prove that. That's why I see sometimes agents, they take pictures. We've seen changing stoves and microwaves, putting in bad ones. So some agents take pictures and they have that, and it was working, right? Now it's not, or damage during the move. Those are, the sellers are liable for those. But other than that, you are completely out of luck. You cannot rely on the boilerplate clause that, oh, things have to be done be transferred in good working order. And we see this often.
well, an inspection can't catch everything
Too bad.
either.
Too bad.
Yeah.
Too bad.
So then why do we use that clause?
That's why you have schedules. That's why you guys, you rely on schedules and
Right,
use
so
that
if we
clause.
put good working order in a schedule, and everything's not in good working order,
Then don't waive the inspection.
it
inspection
has
has
to
nothing
be
to do with the chattels.
It says in good working order at time of closing.
And the inspection has nothing
Well,
to do
if
with
you
the chattels.
manage that in the schedule,
Yeah.
then you can make that an argument.
Yeah.
But I'm telling you that it is trumped by the duty, buyer beware, duty to inspect the property at the time of firming up. You will not have a solid argument, no matter what you do. Inspect the property, inspect it right. If you are in a rush and in competition, you are running a risk.
What about the as-is question?
That's good. That's good for the seller. If you're acting for the
As is,
seller, put
where
as
Usually
is.
if
Careful,
there's like, if
careful
it's not
for
a
the
new
bank.
property, or, I mean.
No, but I'm saying, does it
Banks
hold
don't like
up?
that.
No, banks don't like it at all.
As is,
As
where
is.
is
Don't put it in there.
So you're saying the as is clause is good, it will hold
It's
up.
a-
And if it works fine, yes, if buyer beware. And if you had issues, you should have raised them, right? Otherwise,
I have a question. If my Schedule A has the working order clause for chattels, and their Schedule B has seller makes no representation, everything as is condition, and both are in there, neither have been removed,
I'm telling you, if it goes to court, it's sellers gonna win the day. And that's to mitigate it. That's why lawyers we tend to tell the clients, unfortunately, and we are not looking at stars at the end of the day when time is taking 5 o'clock. But we have to tell the clients that if there is a disagreement that monetarily does not reach the 10% of value of the property, that's some type of arbitrary threshold, but that's what the courts have decided, you cannot refuse to close. If there is a differing opinions as to something is working or something was done, fixed properly or not, if it does not go to the root of title, number one, and it doesn't reach the 10% of the value of the property, you have to close. I deal with frustrated purchasers. They say that it was agreed, it was a squeaking hardwood floor in the bedroom. Now they changed it and they put a completely different hardwood floor that doesn't match with anything else. I'm not going to close. I say, yes, you are. Yes, you are. But I always, in those cases, if I have a lawyer on the other side who's gung-ho in their positions and ready to fight, explain to my client that the obligation is not likely to close in this case. We'll push it, we'll push up. But when it comes to 5 o'clock, you will have to register. And then, of course, we might close often, sometimes we close, reserving the right to sue.
Would there be a holdback in that situation?
No, the seller's lawyer has the right. I act with sellers and I say, no holdback. And we hate holdback. Unless the holdback clause is clearly as to who decides when it to be released. Because we end up as lawyers holding back $5,000 for 3 years. It's a pain for us. Absolutely.
So,
holdback, we don't like holdback, just so you know.
so if the words as is appear, the bank sometimes will do a holdback. So we will advance 80% of the purchase price with a holdback until that thing's fixed. Then we send somebody in to see that it's fixed. Then we give it back to holdback.
Well, what's fixed? You mean like
Whatever it is.
structural problem?
Well, if it's structural, we're not closing probably, period.
Now, very briefly, something that we encounter on new purchase, new builds. Most of you guys, you don't have, I haven't seen many agents who do pre-builds here, but there are some real estate brokerages that they have lots of agents who deal with those. And the clients have no idea what's going on, with respect to them. And sometimes they get an agreement 4 years after the agreement was signed. And yeah, because sometimes yeah, they line up. They literally line up to buy these condos, right? And they have no bargaining power whatsoever. And the sales agent says, which by the way doesn't bind the builder whatsoever, says that HST is included, for example. Well, no, yes it is, but not always. Especially now, when many people are buying these little condos to rent them out and it's a business. And then the client comes to close and we get the statement of adjustments from the other lawyers, and this is big. You know, I'm doing lots of condos. And we see a $24,000, would be even more, just 27 sometimes, $24,000 extra for the HST because you're not residing in yourself or a family member. Because you bought 3 condos, you're not going to reside in all 3. And then we see development charges of $10,000, $12,000. Installation of meter costs, $1,500, $3,000, and all said and done, you're $40,000 short as a buyer. Standard, absolutely, we see that on a regular basis. That's why it's important that at the time of the 10-day cooling off period, if you want to avoid being sued or having really unhappy clients, get that client, go to a lawyer and push the blame all around. We charge a couple $100, $250 to review and put it in, because I just don't review. I put it in a memo clearly what the HST is. Negotiate sometimes with the builder's lawyers on a capping of development levies, or at least I make it clear that they're not budging, but you are open to a risk of development levies, which nobody knows at that time, right? And I explain the clause, the HST, or the right to rent the unit during the occupancy period, which could last a year. I have cases, lots of them, when now the builders outright, they are saying, we are not allowing you to rent the unit during the occupancy period. I bought 3 condo units. What am I gonna do? I'm losing money. Well, too bad, because you did not negotiate that during the 10-day cooling off period. That could be negotiated, actually. Sometimes the builders do not budge with respect to the development levies. They say, we don't know, whatever the city is gonna charge us, we're gonna pass it on. We cannot stiff you, but that amounts very often. At times they do not budge. But they usually do budge with respect to the right to lease the unit, which could be the difference of $20,000, $30,000 for you, right?
Why do they not want you to lease?
They don't. They have some reasons there, but they simply, the contract entitles them. They're just telling us to get lost. And not even the lawyer's not getting, we're getting the language of get lost from clerks. It's impossible to deal with these builders, lawyers to negotiate. So make sure not to be on the hook and liable to your client. Tell them, please go and review the agreement with the lawyer. I know that sometimes the clients say, but I'm shopping around making an offer, I don't want to pay anything. My understanding was that I'm hiring you as an agent and I don't have to pay anything. We see sometimes agents who say, okay, I'm going to credit you $250 at the time of the offer. Might be a conflict of interest a little bit, but we've seen all kinds, right?
Are there some, sorry.
The assignment also is negotiable with 10 days period?
I'm sorry?
Assignment, to be the right to assign the property before closing?
Yeah, you can negotiate those, absolutely, yeah.
10-day cooling.
10-day cooling. Yeah, we review a lot of those, and I have a turnaround of 1 to 2 days, because very often we get it 2 days.
It's a new condo though.
Yeah, new condo, or townhomes over there, right?
Like, you try to recommend to your client that, okay, go to a lawyer, and the client says like, they don't want to have a lawyer.
Yeah.
And that
Just evidence, try to evidence that right about
That
the
in
text, you
writing.
do lots of text and emails, save that, trust me.
something in writing that you say.
That you advise them to go to a lawyer, so they cannot come back 4 years later and say, I'm short $40,000 because I did not negotiate these.
Are there circumstances under which you could close on a new condo, not reside in it, and not pay the HST?
No, it's illegal. You get the HST rebate, that usually around $24,000, only if you are buying it for your own use or used by a family member. Now, I'll explain you. The test is, at the time of the purchase, is your intention to reside in the property. Many people say that you have to live a year. There's no such law. But usually, if you declare that you are buying it to reside, and then you decide to resell in a year from now, prima facie, you've met the test. You don't have to live there for 100 years. But if you say that I am residing, I'm buying it to reside, and then all of a sudden says, my girlfriend, my boyfriend is claustrophobic, doesn't like the elevator, now I have to change within my mind in 2 weeks, might be hard to prove. And the CRA is going very hard after this. Last year I got a case when I was acting for a couple in the early 50s, immigrants, they worked as superintendents in a building. And they were so excited, I remember. They bought a condominium very close to their workplace. They came and signed, happy. Then, about 8 months later, after closing, I get a call from them, freaking out. I got a letter from CRA asking to pay $26,000 plus penalties plus interest. What is this about? And I go, are you in the unit? Because I make my notes on the file, right? And I check the file and say, have you resided there? No, I didn't move in there. Oh, you didn't? Why? Because when I gave notice to my employer, they told us that we're going to fire you, you have to reside in the building. And we know that. They want to have them work for 24 hours available for any problem that the tenants have, right? It was a residential building. We know the reason. And then a couple of immigrants with no high chances of getting employment in other areas, they're faced with either losing their jobs and moving to a new condo or continue to reside there and rent. And I said, okay, can you provide me with the evidence and the communication that you had with the employer? They showed me the emails. I forwarded that. I wrote a letter to the CRA, and the CRA accepted that. Why? Because the test is, at the time of the purchase, is your intention to reside in the property? And that was genuine communication. They didn't do this communication knowing that 8 months from now they're going to be challenged by the CRA. But that's genuine, right? Again, you cannot say, oh, I changed my mind because I don't like condominiums. It was too small. No, too bad. You cannot do that, right? But if you lose a job and you have to move from Mississauga to Scarborough, maybe that's not a good argument.
What about a material change, meaning the woman got pregnant and has twins and now the property's no longer fit for them because their family's bigger?
That might not fly very well. You control your, I know.
Sometimes you can, sometimes you can't.
Always there's a chance that you might get pregnant.
But it's only at the time of purchase, the intention, right? So,
And then it got delayed and delayed, now you're...
And by the time you're having twins and you didn't know that you're pregnant, here we go 9 months, you should first. So the year mark is past anyways.
She was bloated.
You will not have problems, right?
Anton, like after 10 days, like now can we recommend client to go to lawyer?
After 10 days?
Yeah.
Oh, the seller's lawyer will not even entertain, will tell us to go back to law school first year. It's done.
It's done. Okay.
Done. You cannot change anything. They will not entertain. But if you tell them that here is a list of things that my client wants, and I always put it like that. Different from resales is, in resales, if there is a condition, unless that condition is waived, typically the agreement becomes null and void. Completely contrary to the pre-bill. Unless you cancel in writing, the deal automatically firms up. And the clients get so distracted about this. I have to put it in writing like 2, 3, 4 times. That yes, you're negotiating, but if we do not get an agreement by the other lawyers within the 10-day cooling off period, remember, this deal is firming up the way it is. They have to know that, right? They have to know that. That's why I suggest sometimes when it's so important for them, the right to rent, for example, to lease during the occupancy period, I put it in writing to the buyers, to the seller's lawyers, and I say builder lawyers, unless you agree to this clause, please consider this as an official notice that this deal is dead. That's when, trust me, we get the other lawyers pay attention to us. Because they don't want the deal to fail, right? But other than that, they can choose to ignore us nicely. And rightfully so, they get their firm agreement. Now, status certificate, please, even when you are 100% sure that this building is relatively new and good and dandy and everything, you know about 100 deals that have closed and no problems, still you need a status certificate. If your client tells you clearly, I do not care about the status certificate because I already have another unit here in this building, you always put in the schedule that the seller is to provide the status certificate, even though it's not a condition. Because the bank, we as lawyers are acting for the banks as well. And we have to make sure that we show that there is a status certificate and it's satisfactory to them. Otherwise, the bank will not authorize the release of the money in the day of closing.
Satisfactory for who? For the buyer?
For the bank.
For the bank?
It's not, we're acting also lawyers,
For the
as
buyer.
lawyers for the bank, right? The client will be satisfied and it's not good enough to close the deal, right? And and the other condition, the major condition is the financing, which of course we have. Craig, you want to say a few things about that? Because that's important.
I will queue up.
So basically for the status certificates, I mean, we're just looking for, somebody to basically sign off on the waiver to say that it's been satisfied. We don't get involved in whether or not they have enough in the reserve fund to fix the underground parking lot if something were to go wrong or anything like that.
But this is where it becomes tricky, because the bank says, if there's a bad status certificate, the client says, I'm getting an excellent deal. I don't care about this. I know that there's a potential for a huge special assessment where a lawsuit is going on. I got a great deal. I know what it is. I know how to make business decisions. That's fine, right? But if I tell the client that this is not good, actually, we have an obligation to tell the bank. And sometimes.
More obligation.
Yeah. If we call the bank and I say, there is a lawsuit and this and that, the client is not worried, is waiving. You know what the bank will tell me? That's why we're hiring you. They're not paying us, but that's why they're hiring us. That's why it's up to you. You as a lawyer tell us. We rely on your opinion, whether it's good or bad. How can I tell the bank it's good if I tell them the client is bad, right?
There's things called approved solicitor lists and unapproved solicitor's lists.
I don't want to be on the unapproved.
You know, so as an example, so Anton's trying to protect your customer, but then his next 3 customers bank with TD. Well, he's not acting for them because he's on the unapproved list.
Yeah.
So he's going to protect the bank more than your customer every day.
Where is this on approved list or approved list?
Well, there's some institutions that say that although we are in good standing with the Law Society, just because you just, you're not doing this due diligence for us as a bank, where the purchaser bought a condo, put 5% down, and then got a huge special assessment, and they defaulted in payment of the mortgage, then the bank says, I'm going to take over the property and sell it. They're selling at a loss, and say, but why the value of the property went down? Because it's a huge special assessment. Nobody wants to buy those. And then the bank will tell us, but why didn't you tell us if there's a special assessment, there's risk? They put only 5% down. Now we lost $50,000, forget it, we're not worried about you anymore.
How is it that you're obliged to the bank like this?
Because they're getting our money. The
Would the bank-
lawyer's getting our money.
Would the bank
It's
sue-
sent to him in trust.
Would the bank sue?
It's not sent to your
They
court.
will sue us,
They will sue
and they will also send us.
They're acting for us.
Right.
Yes, more so. So the other thing that can happen too is, it doesn't happen so much anymore. So I've been around for over 30 years, and lawyers used to provide undertakings. Well, then they never undertook to give us what they wanted, so we put them on the list. You don't want to be on that list. It's very hard to get off, right? So that's one thing. So I'll just kind of give you a little brief rundown of who I am. Lizanne, I've met a few of you before. Jackie Karen, I remember when she first joined Royal LePage, like, I don't know, 15 years ago, I met her the first day she was working, I think. So I've been around for over 30 years, and when I started in the business, the rates were 12.75%. And now today, I'm seeing deals where clients are putting down $2 million on a $3 million purchase. Another client's putting down 5% on a $900,000 purchase, and the guy putting down 5%, I can give him a better rate than I can the guy who's putting down $2 million. And that's a fact. And the reason why it is because we sell our mortgage in the open market, so we bunch them all together, we sell them to somebody, and we get money. Well, when these mortgages are insured, we get more bang for our buck. So as a result, for the first time, I think ever, that I've ever known, the bank is actually passing the savings on to the client, which I've never seen before, but they're actually doing it, which is nice. So just so you know, if you've got a customer that's getting conventional financing, 50% down, 60% down, 70% down, somebody's putting down 5% is going to get a better rate. Just so you know, that's how it works. So nowadays for cost per thousand, it's about $5.04 per thousand. I use $5 because $5.04 is hard for me to calculate. So nowadays, if you're getting a mortgage of say $600,000, I would tell your client you're going to pay $3,000 a month. So that's basically how old school. When I first started, I used to get these phone calls at 10, 10:30 at night, 11 o'clock at night. I'm in the back of my real estate agent's car, and they want another 30 grand. I would say to them, it's $150 a month, and they're like, oh, I can handle $150 a month, but I can't handle 30 grand. So it's just kind of old school mentality. I mean, nowadays everybody's walking around with a calculator on their phone. Back then they weren't. We were using sliders, remember? Amortization schedule, up and down.
Sorry, what was that percentage again? 5.4?
$5.04 per thousand. That's based on the 25-year RAM.
3.5 points approximately.
Yeah, 360, something like that. Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, 30-year amortizations and stuff are around now, but the banks are charging premiums on that, just so you know. Nowadays on pre-approvals, very, very difficult thing to do nowadays, because where the property is located will depending upon what your rate you're going to get, believe it or not. So, obviously in Toronto we don't have an issue. We're going to give people in Toronto the lowest rates we can. But if you're buying in Midland, or if you're buying in Collingwood, or buying in a small municipality where there's a population of 10,000 people, you're not going to get a Toronto rate anymore. It doesn't exist. Okay, and it's all about how the banks can make more money, all right? They always look for ways to make more money. They're very good at it. So that's one thing. Other things in regards to, I've heard people saying about deals not, completing. I don't know how that's possible in a day like today. I tell agents, if your deal didn't close, shame on you. Because every single person, and I mean this, like, again, I'm around 30 years, and sometimes I don't know a deal from a non-deal, which is unbelievable. I used to have my own lending limit, okay? But nowadays, the way the banks are getting, they're getting tighter and tighter and tighter. Every single client should be sitting down with somebody like myself before they get in your car. And I'm not talking the other institutions necessarily, I'm just talking TD. Because when TD does a pre-approval, we take income verification, we check your credit, we check everything. So it's an approval, because in Etobicoke, for the last 10 years, you can't put conditions on offers, you're not gonna get the property. So, you know, sometimes I will do the Craig Sims approval, but I don't like doing it anymore. So if you call me the day of closing and saying, you know, Craig, you know, we're making offers, we're at 8 people, can you give them an approval? I will, but I will stipulate to the agent in writing that this is not an approval by the bank, because the banks can't do pre-approvals in a day. We're still working on deals that we got 2 days ago that are actually live deals. So, you know, I'm gonna suggest to every one of you that if you wanna do a quick little, you know, whether or not they approve or not, use 4.5. So take their income, multiply it by 4.5, and that'll tell you a good idea of how much they approve for. Can that number change? Absolutely it can, especially when it comes to down payment. So when you guys are talking about, you know, rental properties and basement apartments and so forth, if you're doing an owner-occupied, not even, CMHC won't even do it, but Genworth would do owner-occupied 2 units. But 2 units, there has to be 2 units. If you're saying it's owner-occupied and I'm renting it and it's an illegal basement apartment, it's not getting done. It's not getting done. If you're putting down 20% or more, totally different, because now we're not dealing with the insurer, we're dealing with the bank, and that's it. So if you're putting down 40%, 50%, 60%, do the windows open up? Can you do more than 4.5? The answer is yes. But the days of equity lending, me coming up and I don't have a job, but I'm putting down 70% and I want to get a mortgage through TD, it ain't happening. It is not happening. Those days are gone, and they're not coming back. In this business, I always tell people, don't forget anything, because everything goes like this, right? Stuff that you learned 10 years ago, they take it away from you, and then 10 years later it comes back. That equity lending is not coming back.
Why is that?
Because the office of superintendents are basically coming up to the banks and saying, no more. We like your policies, we want you to adhere to the policies. We're tired of you guys making too many exceptions. That's what they're telling us, and that's what's happened. So, do we still do net worth lending? Absolutely we do. In fact, I'm a bigger net lender than I am an income person, because to me a job could be gone tomorrow, but net worth will always be there. So at TD, if you still have $500,000 in liquid assets after putting down your down payment, you can be approved through the equity lending program for net worth. So we still have it. So I'm not gonna say that it's totally gone, but you know, the days of somebody just saying that I've got the money to put down, I have no job, it's not happening.
Just to piss off Craig, just have a client go to credit unions, they don't have to.
Yeah, totally different legislation, right? Credit unions, totally different
They're
legislation.
not bound by
The Bank Act, yeah.
And that's why we see lots of,
But I can tell you guys honestly, you know, I probably do about $35 to $40 million a year. I have not seen a decline in over 3 years. Now, have I declined people? I have, absolutely. But way before any offer process is happening. I mean, that's the bottom line. So, you know, deals should not be falling through. I mean, you guys work too hard for your commissions. I know I work on straight commission. I don't want any deals falling through. I mean, the way I see it is that if you give me a deal and I can't get the deal done, and somebody else does, if I was that other person, I'd just start asking you for the cream of the crop. I just got this deal that was very difficult to prove. Now I want all of your business. So if I lose a deal, I can lose the potential of that referral source for the rest of my life. I can't afford for that to happen. So all I'm telling you is that, and the thing is, the way we work at TD is, we don't want all of your business. We want the business that would normally go through the doors of TD Bank. So if you know your client already banks with TD, why send them into the branch? Why wouldn't you send them to somebody like myself, where I would actually go to their home and do the deal for them on their kitchen table? So that's the difference. I mean, I tell all of my agents, you guys should always have 3 or 4 people to go to, because your clients aren't always going to bank with TD. Maybe they're going to bank with Royal Bank and they're comfortable there. So you should have a representative at Royal Bank that you can deal with. Not a person in the branch, but a mortgage specialist. That's all they do, and that's all I do.
Are you more competitive or less competitive than a mortgage broker per se?
From a rate perspective?
Yeah.
I would say that we can never be the lowest rate available, nor can you. You can never afford to cut your commission to 1.5, maybe to 2, maybe once in a while. So the same thing, I would say to the client that, you know, I don't negotiate rates with clients. I give them the rate right from the very beginning. So I would say to a client that they'll say, oh, you're matching the rate I got from Royal Bank. And I'd say, well, how long have you been with Royal Bank? Well, I've been there for 30 years. Well, you know me for 3 minutes and I gave you the same rate Royal Bank did. That's the way I deal with clients. So I will never rip people off. I need to make my money though as well. So I would say to you that can brokers buy down their rates? They certainly can. But there are certain products that brokers can't sell. As an example, our line of credit product, which is the best product in the market. So what I tend to do is I tell people that they should hold their mortgages within the line of credit. As they're paying down the mortgage, they get access to the money. How many times have your customers come to you and said, I don't have the money for the deposit? They got $100,000 or $200,000, $300,000 in equity in their property, and they don't have $20,000. Well, if they had my product, they would just write a check. So, you know, to me, it's all about the product. If it was always about rate, nobody would ride the 407. The 401's free. Why are you riding the 407? Because
What
it's
would be the
convenient.
ben, I'm just curious, because this comes up all the time, as well, the client said to me,
Can I have your contact?
Oh, sure, yeah, absolutely.
should I go to the bank or should I go to
A broker.
A broker.
So it's a great question. It's a great question. So my thing would be is this, is that when you deal with somebody from the bank, the relationship doesn't stop at funding. Whereas with a broker, as soon as they fund that mortgage, they have no access to the TD system. They have no access to the Scotia system. So if you have a question about your mortgage, God forbid, you can't call the person who funded your mortgage. Whereas with me, you call me up, I can look at your mortgage, I can do whatever you want. I can call a branch and say, hey. So I would say that from the perspective of customer service after closing, that would be one reason. The other reason I would suggest is that brokers themselves get paid based on term. Okay, I don't know if you guys all know that or not, but the longer the term, the more the broker gets paid. So, if you sit down with a broker and you say, I want to go for 5 years, what do you think happens to the conversation? It's over. Because the broker's like, beautiful, I'm making as much money as I can because you're taking a 5-year term. If you take a 1-year term, the bank's going to pay you like maybe a tenth of how much they pay for 5 years because they know you can take that mortgage every year to another bank and get paid 5 times. And if you got paid the same amount as a 5-year, why wouldn't you do that? I would do that, right? So that's why they do that. So generally when I'm talking to clients, I don't do 5-year terms. I don't, because I'm generally dealing in Etobicoke with people that are getting bonuses. So they want to make lump sum payments. So they'll come to me and say, what's your policy? Well, it's 15% per calendar year. Well, I can over exceed that 15%. How do I go around it? Well, you can take a shorter term mortgage because when the mortgage matures, you can pay it off. The other thing though that's a little bit different, and again, I can't speak to everybody, but I'm a former financial planner. So if a client's earning 4, 5, 6% into TFSA, I'm going to tell them, why would you ever pay down your mortgage at 2 or 3%? Why would you do that? You're earning 6% here, why would you pay down a debt at 3? It doesn't make sense. So the conversation is always going to be different. All I can tell you is the main thing about TD Bank than any other institution is that if we give you an approval, it's an approval. It's not a pre-approval. Okay, so if there's a condition on a pre-approval and you can't meet that condition, you're not approved. Bottom line. But that doesn't happen with TD Bank. So when I hear words about deals falling through and that kind of thing, shame on you. It should never happen. Never.
What if the words as is are in the listing?
Well, yeah. If you notice, I was cringing in the back because I hate those words. Handyman special, as is. It's a very, very tough one because right away, like, so we have APV, which is automatic appraisal system, same as CMHC. We spend millions of dollars on the system. So if you're in the grid and you buy for $700,000 and others are going for $700,000, we're not doing an appraisal. Okay? Some people always say to me, why do we do an appraisal in the first place? You want to know the main reason why a bank does an appraisal? To make sure there's a house there. Yeah. Seriously. You think we haven't done a deal where we funded a deal, we go out there, there's nothing there? It's happened. So, that's basically the main reason why we do it. But, as is, handyman special, you're having an appraisal done every single time for sure. And if you're bidding above the listing price and, you're kind of going to be the big fish in the small pond, you might run into some problems. I can tell you guys, I have not had any appraisal issues at all. None. Zero. So, the majority of all the deals that I see are generally, 50, 60, 70,000 above list. No issues. Okay? Now, for the most part, if a client's putting down more than 20%, then you're not going to have any issues even if it comes in light, because they're putting down 40%. Who cares? If it comes in 10% light, it's still going to be a 70% loan to value instead of 60%. We're still going to do the deal every day of the week. But as is, handyman specials, try to avoid those words if you can, please. got any questions for me, like about your deals?
Unless you're acting for the seller, you don't care.
Yeah, that's totally different.
Can I have your business card?
You can yell at me, for sure. Yeah.
I just want to bring something up as you're talking. I'm thinking about you representing the seller, and the buyer comes in with a deal, no conditions whatsoever. Closing date comes a few days before closing date. Well, some of you have experienced this. And the buyer's agent approaches and says, my seller needs some time to get financing arranged. In other words, he's got no financing. So, you know, when you're representing the seller and you accept an offer from the other side, and it's clean, how do you get proof that the buyer has got financing in place?
I usually question the other agent, the buyer agent,
Okay.
about pre-approval.
Okay, so he verbally or she verbally says, yeah, they're covered, they're fine.
That's a good approach. You don't rely blindly on.
Yeah, well, yeah,
something that might not be-
We've got a few like that, the reason I'm bringing it up.
Right,
We've got a- Yeah, no, that's why I'm bringing it up, because it's important to get some verification that that buyer can close.
Right.
But
Because
they'll-
the person representing them, think about it, I've got a
Right,
buyer, I
for
can make
sure.
a deal here, I can make some money, and I'm gonna believe what the buyer's telling me, he can afford to make the deal close.
Right.
And he's done no work, or she's done no work. You're representing the seller, as in representing the seller, you've got the responsibility to sell the property, and it won't sell if you haven't done your due diligence
Or if
on
he's
the other side.
got, or if he's got the 10% deposit rather than 3%.
Yeah, yeah.
We're not obligated to get any paperwork or.
You can ask for some proof that the seller, or the seller has, the buyer is buying it unconditionally, and you'd like you to take, and my seller would like to see some proof.
That's an excellent approach, actually,
Yeah.
because at the end of the day, you want to see the deal closing, right?
Yeah, all it is a letter from the bank, here's the approval.
Yeah,
Yeah, ours is an actual certificate,
That's what you need,
yeah.
and it's, very few of us do that.
but again,
Very
just so
few
you
of us
know,
run into the problem, but we've got a couple or three right now, I can think of, right here,
Yeah.
where the money's not come about.
pre-approvals don't happen though overnight.
It's a real hassle.
Okay, like it's an official, like, same document.
But back to the lawyer for a moment. Legally, you're representing the seller, and your responsibility is to receive a bona fide offer which the seller has accepted, and you've done your job as the listing agent. The deal has not closed and won't close, but that listing agreement and the agreement purchase and sale support the fact that you paid a commission through that process, even though it hasn't closed. Even though it hasn't closed. So it goes back on the market with another agent, not you, because the seller's pissed off at you.
Again, agreements can be reached between the parties.
But it's written, if you read the wording,
Yeah.
the way it's worded, I'm
And
not
how often do you
finding a couple
pursue
right now.
this? How
We haven't,
often?
we haven't got them settled yet, there's a couple in play right now, so I'm working on behalf of two of you. And, because it reads that you as the listing agent did your job, even though you didn't ask all the right questions.
But going back to that, that's a great point, because you're protecting yourself if you actually ask these questions that you are not necessarily obliged to do, but you do that for your own benefit. Because, yes, somebody comes with a clean offer, you ask for 10% deposit. Yes, you're doing a favor to your client, but not so much to yourself, because the deal might fail anyway, right? The client is going to get the 10%, which is great, right? From our point of view, that's good. I like that as a lawyer, but I understand that you work hard to put together that deal, and then you see the deal didn't close. Yes.
And if the buyer strikes out the finance clause, initials it, and then they call 2 weeks before closing and they haven't got the financing, what happens in that case? I mean, is it still, it eventually closes, in my case it closed, but 2 weeks prior, we had, so in other words, I'm asking if the finance clause is scratched out and they've agreed that they were offered the opportunity and they didn't take it, and now they haven't got financing, where does that leave them, I suppose? Is this the buyer?
Let you do the legal part, then I'll do my
It's a firm deal, but one great point on, that we could make out of that question is the fact that if you're acting for the purchaser, if the purchaser says, I'm good and dandy, I'm closing, don't worry about putting a financing clause. My recommendation to you as agents is put the clause in the scratch.
Yes.
I would agree.
You know that, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
But then, once it's spread, it's a firm deal.
Insert it.
So you
And then have
could
cross
technically
out
put
and
it
show
in.
that he took it out.
So on a listing where we put the broker's remark, please submit form at 801, you can say, and buyer.
You could add that, that could be added, and more.
Yeah,
that's a
great idea.
Because that way when you ask them in the middle of if you're in the middle
Could
of
be
an
on
offer
schedule.
presentation, you say, oh, by the way, did they have their financing? The other agents go, uh-huh.
Yeah, that's right, they don't have a clue.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's gonna affect
so
the
if you
decision.
put it in your broker's remarks, bring proof of financing out as well during the line.
I like it, it should be talked about a little bit deeper than just that.
Yeah, so,
No, but it's just so that you're giving the other agent a heads up that you're gonna be broaching this subject, so you don't,
That's good.
On off the record.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's good. That's a good
I
idea.
like it.
so one thing that has changed, kind of dramatically, and you guys will understand this for sure, over the last, I'm gonna say 10 to 12 months, is, should I buy first or sell first?
Yeah.
So, they're asking me, and first thing I'm gonna say, ask your agent, right? Because, I'm not the expert here in that particular field. So, I'm still kind of, I would kind of push the purchase first. Because on the sale, there's always things that I can do. As an example, if there's equity in that property, I can tell you guys, hey, let's get a lease together for the renting of this property because it hasn't sold yet. So we can use the lease. We also do what's called opinion of rents. Okay, and what that is that I would order an appraisal on their property, and the appraiser would come back to me and say what he thinks that property will rent for. We will go up to 65% loan to value, providing the numbers work. But at the same time, I'd be calling you up to say, give me your opinion as well. So that way we have two solid opinions. The bank's going to treat it like it's rented. And if we can get the equity out of the property in order to close the other transaction, then they're kind of carrying both properties for a month or two. So,
Talking about bridge loan, right?
in essence, a bridge loan without, so just so you guys understand the word bridge, there has to be a start and there has to be an end to the bridge. Otherwise, there's no bridge.
It's gotta be an agreement.
On a firm
So-
deal too, right?
Yes, firm,
An unofficial
absolutely.
bridge loan. That you're-
Correct. There are
unofficial and
Yes,
official.
you're darn right there are.
So your unofficial bridge loan, you don't actually rent the property out, it's just because you have two rental versions and enough equity in there that you can do it?
I might tell the bank that it's actually rented out, but.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right, boss? So, yeah, no, I mean, the bottom line is that, see, when I was taught lending, I was always told never to put the assets of the company at risk, okay? Those days are gone, unfortunately, but I still can keep it in the back of my brain. And I can still work that way, and I can kind of understand what risks I'm taking.
If you want a few more minutes.
No, I think we're done.
And on the disclosure, today I got a question. How much do I have to disclose on what happened in the property? It's a case in two. And the murder. We know that, right?
Yeah.
That it was murder. You have to disclose that. There's no question about it. If you do not disclose that, you're absolutely, most likely you're gonna get sued, right? But you don't have.
Death, what about a death?
Right.
No,
Even if death.
An elderly person
No,
dying.
that's why I brought it up.
because your main obligations are to the seller, to your client. You do not have to disclose, you disclose the absolute minimum required, otherwise you're compromising and you're failing your duty to the client.
What about a non-violent suicide? If somebody took the bills, what's the state?
I would, again, I would go for the interest of my client. It's not a murder.
So it has to
So
be.
it's
a
gray?
area. It's a gray area there.
Gray's a bad color.
It's not a murder. It's not a murder.
So non-violent suicide doesn't necessarily.
Your primary obligation again are
Did the wife give the pills?
We have case law that refers to BC, goes back a few decades, but it's a good law still. It was winter, a young family with 2 children is making an offer on a beautiful property, a nice ocean view and a little beach, paid premium price for that, right? Only to learn that was a new beach, not so good.
Depends on who's opinion.
And who got sued? Both the agent and the seller, obviously, and paid a hefty price for that. Yeah, so, yeah.
So here's the deal, murder in the house, buyer is aware of it.
Buyer is aware of it.
Buyer buys the house anyway, tears the house down, builds a brand new house. on the same land, and then sells it a year later.
Is there a change, is there a knowledge?
I've experienced this.
Well, grow up would be the same thing, right? If
I-
you knock down all the walls.
I would, as a lawyer, I would say, go with the side of caution.
Yeah.
Pointed out that the house was destroyed. Probably this might not affect as much the purchaser because it's not the same home.
It ran with the land, it ran with the area, that happening ran with the area. The neighbors talked about it, that's the murder house.
Yes, yes.
Okay, so it ran with the neighborhood. So
There's a
something's
stigma.
running with the
There's a
neighborhood.
stigma.
There's a stigma.
And it's a stigma.
So you knocked down all 4 walls.
Yeah. Some of the basement walls were left up.
Still the same land.
And it's something that the neighborhood talked about, so the
The
second buyer
neighborhood, that you
was
got
made
it.
aware of that and bought.
Small.
But all the neighborhood has to be, it's a stigma on all the houses in the
Yeah,
neighborhood.
well, there you go,
Exactly.
they still talk
But that
about it.
particular house had the most stigma.
Yeah, right.
Or the cases when there was sometimes get asked what, there was a major flooding in the basement, but it has been repaired? Yes. Has been certified properly? You don't have to disclose that, because you're not
That's good to
You're
know.
not properly representing your client. You don't have to go too cautious because you're underselling your client. Right?
How do you feel about your client seller filling out that seller property information statement? What's your advice on that? Should you get your client to fill that out? I've heard different arguments
We
to
don't
that.
deal with that, we never even see those, but I think
Okay.
that's a deal between you guys.
Right.
And by having the client sign
Well,
it.
a lot of people say you're opening up your client to
Yeah.
minor information that may come up in the future.
But let the
That
buyer
could be
That
one
you
little
don't
thing
need,
that you don't need to know.
disclose.
So I don't get my clients
Yeah.
to sign it,
No
I
one
just get
does.
them to
So
sign
very
off.
discuss
Right.
first.
Right.
There's certain things, let's see, better not to hear them.
Right,
It's not in
I just
writing,
wanted to
but-
opinion on.
What about this, a lot of agents, what they do, when they list a house, they do a home inspection by home inspector and they have the inspection report available for everybody. Is that something you would advise? Are there any-
Stop protecting.
But the buyer should get it. But the buyer, it's running a risk by relying on that, right?
Yes.
Got it.
So if you're an agent who's listed a house and you have that done, should you write something to say that we have an inspection, the buyer is free to do their own
You don't
inspection?
have to tell the buyer to do their job, it's buyer beware, it's their obligation, their lawyer will explain to them that you're relying on that, you're running a risk.
Question on that
You don't
buyer,
have to go beyond what you need to do, right?
on the topic of buyer beware in a house that is listed as is, where does, say, square footage fall under that? If a purchaser now argues that, hey, that's not the square footage I thought.
Yeah.
you-
There's case law to that, and this is more for new purchases than resales,
Okay.
honestly. Because resales say you're looking at it,
Yeah,
buy what you think.
yeah, it's
You
still buyer.
you don't even have to rely on what the seller is telling you. But a new build, there is nothing to see. You haven't gone to walk.
Not new builds, but resales. How does that work with resales? Would it be still more in the seller's favor?
Absolutely, yeah,
Right.
100%. But builders, case law stands for, it was a specific case where it was, a builder was sued and it came close to 9.something%, and the court said, that's not in my area. It's usually up to 4 or 5%. It's the range where they say that it's approximate. And so you use the 4 to 10%, that's not approximate anymore. That's a different consideration. You did not get what you bargained for.
Thank
Very
you.
much.
Thank you so much.